Happy Monday. Happy Monday, February 9th. How are you? It's the week of
I
love, and
love
I
doing
love
them with you
doing
too. Do you have
podcasts with you.
big plans with the family for is that a family thing or is that
Good question. That's a good question. It had been, our kids are a little bit older. So I think early days, it was like, yeah, let's make it a family thing. But I think number one, our kids don't really want to spend time with us anymore.
right?
And number two, I don't feel like we have to. So that being said, I don't think we're going to go anywhere, especially
Do
this year. It's on a
yeah.
Saturday night. And we just, it hasn't really been our thing to like
Mm,
go overspend on a meal we didn't really like. But you know, I also
you
love
will.
love, so I'll think of
You will.
something thoughtful
We got
between.
plans. We're going to go
How
to.
about
I mean,
you?
we're in a new town.
What are you gonna do?
Dallas is new to us. We just moved to Texas, so we're exploring new restaurants. There's one that my wife was kind of eyeballing, so why not try it out?
Nice,
Um, yeah, for you.
perfect. Well, speaking of love, the
Mm,
opposite of love I've heard is fear, and what we want to talk about in this episode is fear and how it distorts transition, veteran transition, how it can play a part, and ideally how we can identify it and deal with it so that we can transition well. So I'm going to ask you first to go back in time. And if you're willing to admit it, I know this is a tall order for a soldier to share the things that you were afraid of when you were going through transition. I'm just maybe the first thing that
the
came to the
paycheck
top of your head.
ending. I mean, talk about timely. You know exactly the to the penny what it's going to be, and that structure. It's so unknown, and so there's a
Yeah.
lot of pressure. And in our house, I was the primary breadwinner. My wife, she was a house mom, but she also taught a little bit,
Yep.
but it was not nearly enough income to cover the costs. And man, I remember we had a lot of financial conversations in that last year leading up till, and then even beyond when the when
Mm-hmm.
the last day in the military hit, it was still a thing, very much so for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that was the biggest fear
Yeah.
was finances, which I get, right? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. What what did that do to you? Did you and Kim like talking about it? Like how did fear
Well,
play its
yeah.
its
So we
part
had some
in
honest
those
conversations, and I
conversations?
remember distinctly we were speaking of dinner. We were having dinner, and I said, "Hey, honey, what do you think about joining the workforce?" And it got to her,
To her?
and she, yeah, yeah. How
What do you
about
think about
helping
winning
out
some
her
bread,
old husband
honey?
here? And she looked at me like I was speaking in another language, like just the most confused look. Like
Uh-huh.
what are you talking about? Like we got kids to raise, we got stuff to like. Who's gonna, you know what I mean? It just totally caught her off guard.
Yeah.
I knew the answer was
Yeah.
not going to go the way I was hoping it would go. Where like, yeah, maybe I can do something part time or whatever and help
Yeah.
out. I, I was
So
I
you were
was just
exploring your
testing the
options. That's what
waters.
fear did at first. One
So you're
option.
saying there's a
Hey,
chance?
maybe I don't have
No,
to
it's
win.
just it was a good way to kind of have. I mean, and that's the thing too is we had conversations we probably never would have had, right? But because of the transition was so, it's a pivotal
Yeah.
one. Yeah, we talk about it all the time. Veterans are going to transition numerous times. This one's
Yeah.
really really heavy. It's really weighted.
And I have not served in the military, but I've certainly had the stress of finances. And it is something, our families are very similar to yours. I've certainly carry the pressure of earning income to be able to provide for the family. And what often happens, I think, to me when the natural times to talk about money or we get into a tight spot, what happens to me is I then allow or give space to my wife to share her fear, and that feels like whatever I was handling was at my max, and now I'm out, I'm done. I can't also handle
Yeah,
the emotion on her side. So I don't know. I think in a big picture, what we've learned from walking with lots of veterans is fear is present. And if you're saying you're not afraid, it's probably because you're emotionally shut
yeah,
down, not because fear is not there. You just can't feel it currently. But fear can often overwhelm
yeah,
us. It can overwhelm somebody. and to the point of not being able to handle it. And it'll then come out in a variety of ways. It'll leak out. And I'm curious for you, how did fear leak out besides
Well, I
trying to
mean,
get your life to work for you?
so I think I handle stress pretty well, and that's just kind of just being self-aware. This is a different type of
Yeah.
stress. So you have the stress that comes from the job of the military, which, deployments and those things can be a certain type of stress. You learn how to deal with some of that.
Yeah.
This was super unfamiliar, and I think that's it. It's unfamiliar territory. There's a
Mm.
lot of structure, and you know what your next order duty station is going to be, or at least you can negotiate sometimes. But most of the time, you're told go here, and you're there for 2 years or 3 years doing the job. And it's don't get me
Yeah.
wrong. There's still some unknowns, but you can kind of see where you're going. This is a completely new adventure, and it feels like uncharted waters. Even though other veterans have done it, it feels like nobody's ever done it
Hmm.
before. Um,
Yeah.
and which is kind of crazy
Yeah.
because you would think, oh well, let me talk to other veterans who've navigated it. But there's also this thing of I can figure it out.
Hmm.
Other people have done it. We'll be fine.
Yeah.
It's okay. Uh,
Yeah.
it, but the fear is
Yeah.
inside for sure because it's just not normal. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You're not, I'm just using air
Right.
quotes. You're not supposed to be afraid, right? I don't know if there's a culture where that would be more true. Obviously, certain cultures being macho, manly, masculine, that's a little frowned upon to also say, "Hey, I'm scared right now." But uh, military, especially, you're all able to handle
Yeah.
quite a bit of complexity and stress, like you said, whether it's deployment or whatever. Um, I am curious. I've noticed a pattern in some folks in that fear of the money, sometimes being willing to compromise something that's important to you to be able to relieve that fear. Because if you can get a job and there's steady
Yeah.
income, take it. And there's a lot of
I
common
mean,
sense
yes,
there.
100%.
Have you
And I
seen that?
think, this goes back to really the fuel that lit me up to get to this point where you and I have built this thing with Casey and a bunch of other amazing people, Vector Accelerator for veterans. We've seen the outcome of veterans who choose out of desperation, they choose unknowingly, unwittingly, and it's the money thing, it's the external needs, and sometimes it's not even the money, it's maybe the location that's really the driver. It's we got to stay in San Diego, we got to stay in Texas, we got to stay because the kids are here, or we're going to homestead, and that becomes the primary need, which is important. I don't ever want to shy away from that conversation because it needs to happen.
Yeah.
And in fact, a lot of the original curriculum we talked about was what are those external needs? Let's talk about those, not necessarily answer them, but let's talk about
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
But what's neat about Vector and these conversations that you and I have is we want to get to that fear conversation, that the unknown conversation, the layers below the surface, which are all inside the head, which can
Yeah.
be very it can be you can feel alone, and it's not cool. It's not cool at all.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's really the fuel for Vector Accelerator, and why I think you and I are constantly going to be in this space, because it's never going to stop until
Yeah.
all the veterans know that they need to do this work. When all military people know, oh yeah, I'm going to do Vector Accelerator, I'm going to do this thing, and man, when I hear that, when you hear
Uh-huh.
that, we're going to celebrate like you would not believe.
Yeah. Yeah.
We'll stop podcasting.
Yeah. We'll stop podcasting too. You mentioned being alone. I think that's something I've also heard over the years is the sense of losing community,
Mm-hmm.
losing belonging, losing team, and the idea that you might not get that back. And I know, especially in the Marines, like to say once a Marine, always a Marine, but in the sense of it's different. There's a role change, there's
Oh
a
yeah.
status change, there's a communal change, that fear of isolation, not being a part of something, a group. Did you feel that? Because I know sometimes people just kind of their transitions a little bit like elongated, so they feel they're doing something, they're kind of
Yeah.
disconnected over the course of months or even a couple of years.
You know
What
what?
was
Well,
that
I
like for
had a
you?
healthy transition because luckily I had these questions before I punched out. So I had an intentional path. But I will
Oh, I
say
never got that.
at the Honor Foundation, where a lot of this curriculum was practiced and rehearsed for years with hundreds and now thousands of
Yeah.
veterans, so we know it works. It was one night, we're going through these types of conversations with the veterans, outside, where the
Mm-hmm.
building was located, there was a social gathering, and our doors were not,
Hmm.
they weren't open to the public, but they weren't locked either. So this gentleman was looking for the bathroom,
Yeah.
got lost, walked in the middle of class. Now, granted, it's in the back of the room, so he really wasn't disruptive, but then he just stood there, like just staring. And it
Yeah.
was kind of odd, right? I'm not kidding. It was kind of odd. And I could see, and I wasn't teaching at the time. So I walked over and I'm like, can I help you? And he's like, this is amazing. And I'm like,
Yeah.
then I realized, okay, he's a little bit drunk because there was a social event that was happening nearby. Come to find out, he was a veteran, and he was like, I
Ah.
miss this so much. He sensed it in the room,
Mm.
and man,
Yeah.
I felt my heart drop. I'm like, dude, like let's go in the hallway and talk. So we ended up talking for like 20 minutes or so. Found the bathroom, and then I got him back to his
Uh-huh.
party or whatever. But my gosh, like that was that sticks out of my head so much because his face, oh my
Yeah.
gosh,
Yeah.
he talk about a sense of loss, a sense of identity, sense of belonging. He was
Yeah.
clearly missing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm. I think there's also maybe the final one that's on my mind is the fear of not doing something
Mm.
truly meaningful, purposeful, world influencing. And I'm sure there's a veteran or more that are listening to this and think, well, I didn't do anything that was world changing. However, you were a part of something that certainly is a part of a force for good,
Yeah.
at least intended to be. And I've heard that over the years, like the loss of purpose and the fear of not, just going to punch a clock somewhere in a cubicle and selling widgets. Like, and I know you navigated that in your own experience going through transition, but what
Yeah,
have you
I
seen
mean, there's a
in that
lot of
regard?
veterans who are probably listening to this saying, well, that's my life right now. Like, I can't wait to get out of the military because it's blah or it's meh. Meh is like the new thing right
Yeah.
now, right? MEH, meh.
Right.
I get it.
Yeah.
Even in those conversations, which we've had numerous, once removed from that environment, they miss the thing. And even the veteran that's listening to, or the active duty person that's listening to this, and say their job is just kind of feels mundane and boring. Um, I could probably pull you
Mm-hmm.
aside and have a one-on-one, and you would agree that, hey, do you think you'd even miss the slightest sense of belonging to the knuckleheads to your left and right? Because it's almost like
Mm-hmm.
very like a family. If you had siblings and maybe there's that brotherly or sisterly love, and you butted heads a couple of times. You had to
Yeah.
maybe you were on bunk beds growing up or something like that, and it's sort of like intrusive. That's a lot of the military. I mean, your earlier years is very intrusive. You have, especially on the
Yeah.
ship where we had 90 guys in one berthing with, people sleeping up above you, and they call them coffin lockers for a reason because you feel confined, and
Mm-hmm.
tiny little curtain to close for privacy. And you're like this for days at a time on deployment. So, yes, I can see why people are like, I can't wait to get out of here. But then when you do, and you get into the corporate world,
Mm-hmm.
where it almost feels like nobody cares, like nobody gives a damn.
Mm-hmm.
That really rips
Yeah.
at you, and you're like, man, I am missing that. It was ridiculous at
Yeah.
times, but dang, there's something about it,
Right.
right? And I think that's part of that fear that sets in later that they don't even realize, and maybe it even just sits in their heart, and they
Yeah.
just keep going along doing their normal routine as a civilian and never even address it. I think what we're finding too is veterans that are
Yeah.
seeing the VA newsletter with Vector Accelerator advertised, those people are like 12 years, 15 years removed.
Uh-huh.
And they're saying, where was this thing when I got out? Like, because it's that whole issue, and those feelings are surfacing now, and they're like, oh my God, I had no idea
Yeah.
this is what I was missing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think a big part of our thesis and all of this is fear is normal.
Yeah.
It's a part of transition. It makes sense. And if you don't recognize it, call it out, kind of place it, name it, very likely it'll distort how you see things and the choices that you make. And that's not good. And certainly things might work out later, but we'd rather help you work them out now. And so fear might lead you to making decisions for kind of lower level reasons, lower shelf reasons, just to survive, just to have security. But what we want for you is to be able to work through fear and let it sit at a place at the table and maybe have a
Mhm.
conversation or two, but then let it kind of turn it down, because you might feel like you're losing your sense of identity, status, role, but you're going to find another one. You have a true identity. You might feel like you're losing community. Well, we're going to help you think through how to put together a new one. And you might feel like the great story of my life is behind me. We wouldn't say that. We'd say the great story has yet to be written. And as you dig into this introspective work with others, you will discover your true identity. You will put together a new team, a sense of belonging, and you will get a new sense of purpose that can change the world. So, play that again if you need to hear it every day. Fear is a part of this, but let's not let it rule the day.